Hello and welcome to the Bourbon Bear. 2023 is upon us, and I have my co-host Fretzel with me. Fret, can we get a dough for the 2023 season?
Go!
There we go, starting the year strong, boys. So, as we kind of unfortunately had happen, the Bears were 3-14. Not a great season, but the end result was fantastic. We have the number one pick and a lot of things in our control. But before we go into the draft, I want to take a look back, Fretzel. What were your thoughts on the 2022 season?
You know, record-wise, could have been better, but I think we saw growth in important areas, most importantly, Justin Fields, and you know that's what your team ultimately is going to be built around and where you're going to see a lot of opportunity for them to improve over the years. Now, where we didn't see areas of growth was defensive line, which is becoming more and more of a focal point in being successful within the NFL, but you know, I think record-wise, disappointing, but that was also the expectation. We are just optimistic people.
Well, it's pretty clear that polls, really wanted to make this not an official tank, but you could tell as season went on, it was better that we lost these close games because they were fun to watch. The Miami game, the Detroit game, when you had Fields running like crazy, you had some cool offense, which the Bears rarely ever have. Yeah. You saw some good things out of the secondary, which I did like toward the end. Eddie Jackson going down was unfortunate. It is what it is. You trade Robert Quinn right before the deadline. Thought it made sense. You got a fourth rounder for it this year. But ultimately, I'm with you. I think there were some exciting things. Obviously, the record was nowhere near what we predicted last year. But the good thing is that this team has flashes of potential.
Yeah.
And that's all you can really ask for. The D-line, you're right, was terrible. But this is a unique stat here. So the Bears were number one offense in rushing, obviously due to Justin Fields being unbelievable. He led the team in rushing, but we were dead last in passing. Yeah. So that is my concern. I want to turn it over to you right now. I know the wide receiver group wasn't great, but how do we get that number up?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is, and this is compliments to the people who write The Athletic, but Justin Fields is ranked last in passes between 0 to 10 yards. So I think what that tells you is he has to improve on his short game passing and really take what the defense gives him, because as we start to saw more towards the end of the season, he started getting knocked up a lot more, getting those little small injuries where those hits start to pile up. So where he has to work, he has to improve upon is short game passing and kind of just being willing to take what the defense gives him and not try and live for a home run play every time, although he's the type of player that can do that. The other area is, I think him having another year of continuity with Mooney and then Claypool getting fully up to speed is only going to help them. They should be out in the market and get at least one more receiver, whether that's a true number one or just another guy that can give them a really good complement for 3 top-end wide receivers. Not top-end. I mean, Mooney and Claypool are very solid NFL receivers, but then you add in Kmet too. So that's a 4-headed weapon right there where that's where you kind of need to be successful in the NFL, and then you already have Fields' legs combined with whatever they'll do at the running back spot, which what we saw with this offense is it's going to be a run-first offense. Now, I think what the other interesting piece will be, though, is how is Luke Getsy going to adjust to adjustments that teams have already started to make to them. So he made that mid-season adjustment last year. It was successful for 6 games, and then teams started to adjust. So what's his now readjustment?
And that's a good point. There was that flash of brilliance for a couple of weeks, and then I think the Bears literally gave up. I think it was Philly, they gave him a good game, but after that game, they just kind of threw in the towel, and it is what it is. But you brought up an interesting point, though, because most people have their opinions on the Chase Claypool trade. That pick would have technically been a first-rounder, would have been 32 due to Miami losing their pick. What are your thoughts on Claypool integrating this offense? Because lackluster, obviously, after the trade deadline, but I do think he has potential, but you gave up a lot to get a little last season.
You did, and I think that's all going to even itself out because you now have the number one pick, and Claypool, whether it was him not performing or whatever you want to call that helped them get the number one pick. So what they're going to do in my mind is they're going to trade down and they're going to just accumulate more picks. And at the end of the day, I think giving up the last pick in the first round for a guy like Chase Claypool, who is a proven NFL commodity, rather than keeping that pick and drafting someone that you see so many busts out there. I think he's a guy that's going to immediately help you. He's a go up and get it kind of receiver. So I think, especially with how weak this receiving class is, I would do that trade 10 times out of 10, and hopefully I'm not here a year from now eating my words.
So I'm with you in the sense that, the draft is gamble. You could take a second round race. God, who did we have in 2018? Anthony Miller.
Yeah.
I look at someone like that, and you could draft something like that, and it never works out for you. Claypool at least does have some stats to back him up, but my concern is that you have one more year left in his contract, and then you have to pay him.
Yeah.
Wide receivers command a lot of money in the market, and that's the issue. Because I don't think, unless he has a monster season next year, don't get me wrong, he might be, you trade a second-round pick, and then he's going to be gone next year.
Yeah.
Because your only options are going to be franchise tag or pay if he has a good year. If he has a bad year, I have no problem letting him go. But then again, you wasted that pick. But I do agree with you in the sense that if you draft someone, you're gambling. That's all it is. He's at least got something to back up his resume.
Yes.
But ultimately, though, you had mentioned before, too, that Justin Fields needs to improve in the dink and dunk. But I think it's more the deep ball. You know, there were a couple flashes last year, but ultimately, when they drafted Fields from Ohio State, that was his bread and butter, was that long throw. And we saw a glimpse of it, that one Greg Mooney catch. I think they need someone to be that true number one. Like, I almost wish we could have DK Metcalf because somebody just lob it up to and say, you're going to catch the ball. But what do we do, turning it over a little bit to 2023 predictions here? I know you mentioned D-line as well. But when do you think a receiver is even going to be drafted for the Bears? You have the number one pick. There's going to be a lot of trade. We're going to transition to the draft right now. But what do you think they're going to be prioritizing in free agency before we get to the draft?
So I think free agency-wise, they will be prioritizing offensive line. And, you know, whether that's continuing to build depth or really just adding more competition, because that's an area where, you know, it's rare for your starting week 1 offensive line to be that same offensive line in week 17. So like what you need competition. You need guys who are versatile and guys to continue to build up competition. And, you know, if that means Lucas Patrick is a backup offensive lineman, like that's a great situation to be in then. So I think offensive line will be number one priority for the Bears this offseason. And then you know, the wide receiver market is just so weak. Jacoby Myers is the best one out there, and you know, nothing against the guy, but I would not pay. I think it'd be not a great use of funds to look at him and say, let's give that guy $15 million a year.
So I'm with you. And again, like the wide receiver market this year, I don't think they're going to spend a ton on, because everyone's saying the Bears should get DeAndre Hopkins. Love Hopkins, fantasy hero this year, but the issue with him is on the wrong side of 30, and I don't want to pay top dollar for someone on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah,
Jacoby Myers, same thing. I don't like any wide receiver available right now that won't get either paid or tagged. So I'm kind of with you on that one. But right now, let's think about how the line looks. You mentioned Lucas Patrick. Not a lot of faith in him. I know he's injury. It is what it is. But you basically have Borum, who I'm a little concerned about. Jenkins, feel great about. Need a guard. That's not even a debate. Like I won't even name anyone right there. And then obviously you have
Braxton Jones.
Braxton Jones. Yeah. I feel good about Jenkins and Braxton. That's all I feel good about. Do you think they should move Braxton to right tackle, though, and pay top dollar for a left tackle?
I think that's where you bring in, like, the competition. And, you know, you see, like, if you bring in, like, what's his name, Orlando Brown Jr., the guy from the Chiefs who's getting a lot of hype, or also McGlinchey from 49ers, where, you know, let them battle it out, and if one, you know, significantly outplays the other, then that's when you can see how they shift in there. But I think McGlinchey's more of a true right tackle. So I think, you know, left tackle is a really expensive position. And if that's one that you can keep him on his rookie salary for as long as you can, and it seemed like he had a really good rookie year, everything that we saw.
We are aligned right there. He did. Actually, statistically wise, he had a fantastic rookie year playing a very tough position. And, I mean, that being a fifth-round pick is an absolute steal, it looks like. So props to Poles for making that decision. But I'm with you there, though. Right tackle, Borum got in 2021 or 2021. Decent year, and everyone had a lot of faith in him. I think he's going to be your swing tackle of anything. I don't think he's going to be your true day one starter. So I'm with you there. Spend the money in the line. But, again, both sides of the trenches matter. So what are we going to do on the defense?
Man, that's a tough one, too, because, you know, there are guys such as Payne at Washington.
Got franchise tagged, though.
He did. I mean, I think you just have to kind of scour the market and, you know, also look at within the draft other trade scenarios where you could get guys. You know, DeForest Buckner is one that comes to mind, is if Indy's looking to really kind of tear it down and start from the ground up, is he a guy that you could get in a trade package? But you really need to find different options to continue to solidify that defensive line because it was bad.
Agree with that, and especially there are a couple guys on the market. Again, DeForest Buckner might be even available without trade. It might be you know, something that could happen. But the Philly has 2 D linemen on the shop right now.
Hargrave is one of them. That guy's.
So there are people out there to do a quick rebuild in that, my opinion there. But let's transition to draft then, because we have the number 1 overall pick, Jalen Carter. News came out about the arrest. I'm not a legal expert by any means, but what do you think that's going to do? Because I thought it was going to be a clean cut. Bears maybe trade Houston for the 2 and then go to 4 and then get him. Now he might drop to late first round. I don't know. This is all skepticism right now, but that was an easy fill the 3 tech with. But now that opportunity for the Colts to trade for Buckner becomes a lot more reasonable because that fourth overall pick just lost a lot of value with Carter's situation.
Yes.
So what do you think, transitioning to the draft, the Bears do with this number 1 pick?
I mean, I think they trade at least once. If they trade twice, that's an ideal scenario. But, I think as we get a lot closer to this draft, you're going to see, it really comes in waves from what I've seen where different quarterbacks get different hype at different points of time. Right before they even went to the combine, it was all Bryce Young. Before that, it was Will Levis. Like, that guy's amazing. And now it's Richardson. Is he the dark horse to get taken number 1? Which, if my franchise took Richardson, I would head for the hills and run. But I think, the Bears are in a position where they need to accumulate as much good talent as they can, and that what that involves then is, reaping better assets. And so what that also includes, though, too, is like looking at the draft next year, where if you can get first rounders for next year's draft, it continues to set you up for a successful run here within the next next year or two to continue to solidify your roster.
So I agree with you there, and feasibly, though, I know we mentioned trading twice, which is very possible, don't get me wrong, but the Texans, people are thinking, the Bears will trade the Texans for the 2 and the 12. There's no chance. The Texans are smarter than that. You have a whole franchise to rebuild right now. Granted, you need a quarterback to do so, but if you're giving up first rounders this early, no chance it's going to happen. But realistically, though, I think you could technically trade the Texans for the 2, then their second rounder, which is going to be 32 because of the missing pick, which can throw everything off. But that's feasible in my mind, which is a good buildings piece. I like that.
And then you make back the Claypool pick.
Yes, exactly. That actually helps it out greatly. But the issue with it, though, in turn, is the fact that, hey, a lot of these teams need quarterbacks.
Yeah.
They want that first pick. Once they see the combine, all these kids playing out there, someone's going to be determined. So what if someone reaches out to you, the Commanders or someone, not a single-digit pick, and says, hey, we'll give you 3 first-rounders for that pick? I would take it in a heartbeat. I know you're not going to have immediate returns on it, but 3 first-rounders if you're dropping to 16, kind of don't hate it.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to take a look at when those first-rounders are, and also how it stacks up against some of the other opportunities. Because then, if we're talking about moving back to the 16th pick, well, then not only are you missing out on those top-tier defensive linemen, but then you're also missing out on the top-tier offensive linemen, such as like a Skornowski. And it's like I think that it limits your.
He's the Northwestern guy, right?
Yes.
I've heard actually interesting things about him. Everyone's concerned about his arm length, so I think he's going to drop for him. You think he would?
Yeah.
He was projected to go top 10, and I don't know if that's going to happen, but no, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think if you can move between where they are as number 1 right now. If you can stay within the single digits, that's obviously the ideal scenario, and it sets you up to still take one of those premier positions, whether that's defensive line or offensive line. Where I start to get a little scared is if you move back to 16, then are you more prone to take a wide receiver, which this wide receiver class is known for just not being the strongest, and what we've all seen is second, third round, you can still find a really good wide receiver. So, when you have that in-between pick, you want to make sure that the guy that they're taking is the best on the board, and I would be nervous about who would be available at that point in time that can really immediately help the roster.
So, but that's where it comes down to, though, is the future. This year, I'm not going to get predictions, way too early to do that, but it's about making a team that's not going to be, 1 year flash of brilliance and then all of a sudden, looking at 2018 right now, and then go into mediocrity for 3 and 4 years.
Yeah.
Don't want that whatsoever, which is why last year was actually a blessing in disguise. It needed to be torn down. We were going to sit in the limbo of 6 to 8 wins, maybe make a last seed playoff team and lose first round.
Yeah.
Hate that position to be in. So all pandered out. But the big thing is, though, I think feasibly you can stay in the top 10 picks with trading 3 times. And hear me out here. It's going to blow your mind.
All right.
You trade Houston, the 1 for the 2, and you're receiving the 2 and the 30. It's always going to mess me up. So the 32nd pick.
Okay.
Yeah, 32nd pick. You trade the Colts, the 2 for the 4. You're probably going to get the 4 and maybe a first rounder next year and probably DeForest Buckner.
Yeah.
And then you trade again. Wild scenario here, because I don't know what the Cardinals will do at 3, but if you can trade again and just get any kind of capital to go from 4 to 9 or 7, whatever it's going to be, even if it's a bunch of third rounders, have faith in the system of just getting young talent, stay under that salary cap, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Do I think it's possible? Yes. I think it's probable? No. Probably not going to happen like that.
Yeah.
Because you're probably, to my earlier point, going to get an offer for 3 first-rounders for the 16 or whatever it's going to be, Commanders, whatever it is. Or the Colts will give you something you can't walk away from, which is going to be, hey, we want the one. Here's our first rounder this year, next year's first rounder, second rounder this year, second rounder next year, and DeForest Buckner.
Yeah.
Which is very possible. A lot of people are actually projecting that to happen. But what do you want from the Colts, though? Because if you're going to take Jalen Carter, which I don't know if they're going to do anymore as the Bears, but you also have Michael Pittman, you have Quentin Nelson. A lot of things you can get from the Colts.
Yeah.
What do you think the Bears are prioritizing there?
Man, I think what you should try and prioritize is Buckner or Nelson, in my opinion. And, I think a Pittman is like a third priority for them since they just did a trade for
You're talking about the Colts or the Bears?
Colts.
Okay.
I'm saying for the Colts to include for the Bears,
Gotcha.
what the Bears should prioritize because, again, you should take a receiver in this draft and you've already kind of taken a swing at a Claypool where you're going to have to pay him in a year. Pittman would be a very similar situation where that guy's produced, but at the same time, you have to get a younger receiver in there that's going to be on that rookie contract. So you're not just paying, you're going to have to pay Mooney, you're going to have to pay Claypool, and then that's going to be too much money invested in your receiving position.
Yep.
So I would say you got to look at a Quentin Nelson, you got to look at a DeForest Buckner and kind of factor which one's going to help your team more. And I think, both those guys you can't go wrong with. Buckner might be a little bit older, but at the same time, that position is so vital to the defense. And if you can get him and then also draft a younger guy at that position, he can help groom that person. I think that you really can't go wrong with either one of those. But one question I did want to ask you, Luke, and not to shift gears too much, but we didn't touch on the running back position. So what do you think?
Well, that you brought that up.
What do you think with Montgomery being a free agent? What's your opinion that they do in the offseason?
So this is actually going to be a question that Bears fans across the Chicago region will debate here. Do you re-sign Monty? What's it comes down to? If you give him a fair offer, which is going to be probably $6 to $7 million, I think you bring him back. Just because, number one, you lost Roquan, you lost Khalil, you lost Robert Quinn. A lot of veterans in that locker room are gone.
Yeah.
He's someone who's been with the Bears obviously since draft, and now obviously it's come to renew it, but you kind of got to keep some of the people to keep this all together.
Yeah.
Because, again, if you saw that, NFLPA ranked the facilities / of all the teams, Bears are actually surprisingly higher than I thought they'd be.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals and whatever, the Commanders were dead last. I thought it was so funny.
Yeah.
But the Bears were actually surprisingly there. So, obviously they're paying, for the facilities. They're doing a good job. Obviously, we have the Arlington Heights rebuild going on. But Monty is one of those people that comes from, obviously, the Pace era, who is still uniting this team, plays his ass off. I love him. If he's going to get a contract somewhere else for $10 million, take it.
Yeah.
Let him go. Totally fine with that. Khalil Herbert, he's got to work on his pass protection, but he's a good running back in the making. So I actually would only give Monty a 2-year deal at max.
Yes.
'Cause that's how running backs work, and I love him to death, but yeah, that's the max I'm giving him.
Yeah.
How about you? What are your thoughts?
So I agree with that. The money would have to be right, and so would the years. But I think Monty really kind of epitomizes what it means to be a running back in Chicago. But at the same time, you look at the other free agents that are available that have that game-breaking speed, such as a Tony Pollard or a guy such as Saquon, and the Bears have so much cap space, and I think it's shown in the NFL too, where these guys they take such a beating now, where they always have historically, but teams have started to adjust where you really need to have two essentially number one running backs, which I think Herbert is a very good guy to have on the roster for that, and then if you can get another guy for a reasonable amount of money.
So what is reasonable, though? Because that's the one position I do not want them to invest in. You have Saquon available. Yeah. You have Oakland's running back. Or Las
Jacobs.
Vegas now,
I would not take Jacobs.
I don't want to spend any money outside of Monty in free agency. Throw the dice here, because next year, again, I don't think we have a chance of making a Super Bowl run. So it is what it is. If you get Monty for cheap, great. If not, run Khalil Herbert. I think that's it. Because you have Ebner, who I did not think had a good season at all, but why would you spend money in a position that's dying? You saw what the Dallas Cowboys did, and they literally were dying in that Zeke contract, who they're probably going to cut, and I don't think anyone's going to even pick up Zeke.
No.
Because why would you? It's almost dumb. But you're dying on a hill if you do that, in my mind. And I think Pace is smart enough to know, Pulse. I hate people. Peace. But I think he's smart enough to know, hey, we give Monty a fair offer. He takes it, great. If not, we'll move on. Build the trenches. He's an former offensive lineman for the Bears. that's all we got to do.
Yes.
We're not dealing with this shit.
Well, and and I think that's the most important piece too. Is the guys who are making the holes for those running backs is really those are the people who don't get the recognition, and that's where everything needs to be built from the ground up, and the rest you can find running back. So
think about that. Like you go and find a center on the free agency market.
Yeah.
You're probably paying him around what you'd be paying like a top tier running back.
Yeah.
And I take that all day because again, Lucas Patrick. Feel bad. He broke his hand, obviously, right before the year started, and then ever since there was kind of a dumpster fire of what was going on. But I do feel like he deserves a shot. Like, obviously, we're paying him still, but I do want to go shop a center and make them battle for it. I think that's the smartest thing you can do. Yeah. But
I mean, listen, it worst case scenario, Lucas Patrick is your backup center. Like, that's an awesome position to be in because he can also play guard, and so like, he's your backup. Even though he started for the Packers a few years ago and he started for the Bears last year until he got hurt. And now he's your backup. Like that is best case scenario for an NFL team.
And we just talked about too. We don't have literally a left guard. That's their biggest hole.
Yes.
And hopefully they figure it out in the draft or free agency, whatever it's going to be. But ultimately, though, it comes down to what the NFC North is going to look like. So obviously, there's a lot of drama going on with Rodgers, but ultimately, the Lions are actually becoming good. And in our lifetime, that's a rare thing to hear because it's been a long time. What are your thoughts on what the Bears are going to look like this year in the NFC North compared to the Vikings, Packers, and Lions, respectively?
Yeah, so I mean,
don't need a record, just your opinion on like.
I think it's going to start to take a little bit of a flip. Where previously it was Packers, Vikings were always the top of the division. I think it's going to start to take a little bit of a rotate where the Lions, they had a hot streak last year where they started to really click and their offense and defense too started to play a lot better. So I think that they will really be at the top of the division. And then Bears, I really firmly believe, not just because I'm an optimist, but I think
double-digit wins last year was the prediction.
Not great. But I think with a guy like Justin Fields, who's going to continue to take that next step, because he's a hard worker and he's someone that would not take no for an answer, is going to really accelerate that franchise to be above a team such as the Packers, who, Rodgers, like you mentioned before, that guy, who knows what's going to happen with him? Is he going to go to the Jets or is he going to retire? Because those seem like there's only two options.
Yep.
So it looks like that they're heading into a future without him. And then the Vikings, they were 8-0 in one-score games last year. Like, that does not repeat itself.
So it's stopping really quick before we get to the Vikings. So Rodgers, if he does retire, he leaves the Packers in the worst hole imaginable. So they have to pay, obviously, all the guaranteed money he had in his contract, and they don't get any trade picks for him, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
I really think he's going to retire and then just say, I'm out, guys.
That's awesome. I mean, I think
love it. That's the way to just... think about Fight Club when you see the buildings exploding in the background when the scene's closing. That's what I picture Rodgers doing to him. I don't even know who he'd be holding a hand with. I know he's divorced, or whatever. But I think that's what he's going to do and just walk away and see the world burn. And that would be my heaven.
And hear me out on this too, where we as Bear fans have not had the most success in our lifetime to be seeing them on the field, but if you're talking about Packers fans, you went from Favre to Rodgers. So that's over 25, let's just say 30 years of Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and you only saw both them win a combined.
And didn't they have Bart Starr too before that?
Well, Bart Starr, that was 60s.
Oh, yeah.
But still.
It's just great quarterback team, though. It is what it is.
That never happens in an NFL franchise where you go from one Hall of Famer to a next Hall of Famer, and you only see them win 2 Super Bowls combined.
Yeah.
I think that's... If he does end up retiring, then I think we want all the Packers tears.
Yes, that. But also, Packers fans hate Rodgers, which is the funniest thing because he is probably top 3 quarterbacks of all time, basic statistics, and he just is a pain in the ass for everyone who's a fan of him, which is so funny to me that Packers are we want him to get cut, but you obviously need to trade him just to that cap scenario where. You're buried.
Yeah.
You give him that extension, is what it is. But as Bears fans, we are rooting for him to retire because that is our perfect scenario.
Yeah.
And that would drop, and I know Jordan Love probably is not going to be a bad quarterback by any means if he had a couple step in a role, but that cap scenario makes the Packers probably drop significantly in the NFC North.
Yes.
So I'm sorry for cutting you off on the Vikings. So
No.
Go ahead.
Listen, I think the Vikings, Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in the NFL. But with that said, they were so good in one-score games this last year, and they showed in the playoffs that, are they really that good of a team? I don't know. I mean, their defense is not good. And so if you lose to the Giants in a home playoff game, I don't think the Vikings are going to have a repeat season like they did last year just because how good they were in those one-score games.
I agree because I think it was they had 10 wins in a one-score game, which is normally you put those at 50-50, and I think they were 90% or something. Mm-hmm. It was an insane stat, but and that win against the Colts, don't get me wrong, like Kirk Cousins played out of his mind in the second half, so I lost my playoff game. Thanks, Gaffney. But ultimately, I don't buy the Vikings. I just don't, and I think everyone in the NFL would buy the Vikings.
Yeah.
So that's a little dangerous, though, because that's a sleeper team that, maybe runs the NFC North right to the number one seed. Who knows what it's going to be. But I think Detroit is actually going to be, I think it's going to be this year, especially based on what Rodgers does, a Minnesota-Detroit battle. But the Bears, as long as they can hang in the division, hey, if you win 3, you play 6 games in the division, so if you win 3 of those, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
It could be 2 against Green Bay, or it could be 1 against Detroit, whatever it's going to be. But that would make me optimistic about the future, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
You need to start winning these games. That was my biggest bane with Justin Fields is that,
he didn't perform in those 2-minute drills.
No, he did, though. It's just the team in general, but he had the ball. I guess you could blame it on him, but he had the ball with chances to win.
Yeah.
And he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I think you can't blame the guy with no supporting cast, but it is what it is.
I mean, if anything, those are for him learning experiences.
Yep.
In a year that we already knew wasn't going to go anywhere. So that's when this next year, from what he learned from this last season, hopefully that's where he can take that next step and kind of understand. Okay, I'm in a situation I was in last year. It did not work out well, but now I have much better weapons around me to help get to that next level. Now, one thing I do want to point out is Vikings were given so you brought up the grading scale of team facilities and treatment of players' families. Vikings were graded as one of the best in the NFL.
They were.
And I think we can all agree that that's due to their old president, Warren, who is now the Bears president. So, if anything, we mentioned the Bears with the new stadium that's going to potentially be built in Arlington Heights, and I think another big time positive for the Bears on the horizon is the new president they brought in, Warren. This guy is going to just revolutionize the franchise more than it already has,
which is good. Which we needed, which was much needed rebuild.
Everything that the Bears have done and you can tell we're both drinking the Kool-Aid, but everything the Bears have done the last year and a half has been very abnormal of what they have typically done. They brought in football people. They have really started to relinquish some of their responsibilities on people that really know what they're doing and have proven success in the NFL, which in the past, when Phillips was the president for over 25 years, before that, he was an accountant. So I think it's just really showing that the McCaskies understand that they really need to start doing something with this sad sack of a franchise.
So I'm going to stop you there because I think once Virginia, God bless her soul, if she passes, I think they're just going to get rid of it because they're done with dealing with this stuff. And you can clearly tell what they've been doing the last, not counting the last 3 years, but before that it was just status quo. Yeah. It was, we're just going to go through the motions, hire whatever, blah, blah, blah. You had John Fox, you got freaking, it is what it is. Yeah. God, I hate Matt Nagy still. But ultimately, I think they're going to wash their hands of it because they can sell that for...
You package.
What do you think the price of the Bears franchise is? To be honest with you, I don't even know. I know people have been guessing it's about like $3 billion to $5 billion, which I think it is. Yeah. Think about how many people are from Chicago. This should be the number 2 because you have 2 teams in New York, 2 teams in LA.
Yeah.
This should be 3 teams in LA actually. 3 teams in New York too.
No, 2 teams in New York, 2 teams.
3 teams in New York. The Buffalo.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yep. Yeah. So, my God, this should be the market, and especially what they did in '85. I know people are still running on nostalgia, but if they were to change hands and Bezos publicly was denied being able to buy the Commanders and he wants to buy Seattle, we'll see how that goes. You get someone local. Chicago's got plenty of billionaires that can buy this team and run it. I am all for it.
Well, if you package the franchise with that land in Arlington Heights, which I think a lot of us have been speculating before, where the Bears what the McCaskies are trying to do is accumulate as much assets as possible because it makes your franchise as a whole so much more valuable. And I think what the Broncos just sold for a record $5 billion, and the Bears are an original NFL franchise and hold some of the most historic moments within the league as itself. And I think we will see a number that has never been shown before in the NFL when they do go up for sale. And I would speculate 8 to 10 billion.
You think that high? Wow.
I do, because I think, and that's because the values of these franchises are continuing to skyrocket. And if you take the same amount that was sold to the Broncos, so $5 to $6 billion, but then you package that land in Arlington Heights with the Bears, and that tacks on an additional at least $2 billion because the stadium itself is going to cost $1.5 billion. Let's just speculate. So I really think that, with the death tax and with the McCaskies not having any other source of revenue, it's going to be it's exciting times. It's stuff that we have never seen.
And that's kind of like this whole everyone, it was technically a rebuild, but Poles said it wasn't at first, but I'm not going to go deny or accept that. But right now is a turning point of the franchise.
Yes.
I do feel like it is.
Yeah.
To your point, they're hiring the right people. They're starting to actually realize, hey, we're not doing this again. NFL is hell when you're between 6 and 8 wins because that does you nothing.
You're in purgatory.
You're in purgatory, which you cannot be in. So cut the crop.
Yeah,
it is what it is. Get the cap under control. Fine by me. But I'm not a big college football guy. I publicly said that multiple times on this podcast. But what do you think is the biggest sleeper in the NFL? Because I do have my eyes on one guy, but you follow college a little bit better than I do. And Jalen Carter is the expected Bear, but now with this new drama, it kind of opens up a whirlwind of what you could do if you trade with the Colts at 4.
Yeah.
Who do you want at that pick? Let's say, hypothetically, we had 4. Who do you want to take?
If Anderson's available or Carter. I think those guys are interchangeable where, Anderson has such a successful college career. He had 17.5 sacks a year ago, and then he had 10 sacks this year. So it's that guy, those 2 seasons combined, had 27.5 sacks in his sophomore and junior year in college.
And we need to improve on the edge, because last year was abysmal in our pass rush. I'm with you there 100%.
And I don't think Carter is going to do any time for his crimes.
Again, we're not both legal experts at all.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's going to happen. That's bizarre that it came out right at the combine, which I think was somewhat intentional, which is kind of weird. But I will say, though, keep your eyes on Tyree Wilson. This guy is a physical freak.
Yeah.
He could be one of the best pass rushers in my mind ever. And don't get me wrong about Anderson.
Yeah.
Unbelievable stats, played better competition. But if you have a physical specimen like this guy, holy crap.
Is he a Texas Tech guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a 6'6". Yeah. I think he's 280. That's how is a guard or a tackle going to defend that?
Yeah.
And on the combine, he actually came out publicly and said, I talked to Bears twice. I want to lead that locker room for the new class. I'm I like this guy. Right?
Yeah.
I've been watching the footage of the combine. He just sold me right away.
Yeah.
I'm okay, I can live with this guy. But Carter, I think everyone's been projecting, obviously, is the better pick.
Yeah.
But what do you think realistically he goes, though? Because of this drama with the law, it is a mess up scenario because clearly they were racing. He claims he's innocent of all guilt, but I would have loved him to be a Bear, but now I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah.
Do you take him at 4?
I think it depends on how everything from a legal standpoint shakes out. And when this really starts to come and he has to face the courtroom of what the details are, because right now it's only a misdemeanor. So is that something that he would get suspended for, or he have to face criminal time? I don't think so. But I think it's going to make teams kind of second guess: is this guy a true hardened criminal, or is he someone that is just as a one-time offense? And for everything that we've seen, it seems like it's just a one-time offense, and it's just kids being kids, which is really sad because 2 people lost their lives. But is that what this kind of situation is? So I know I didn't answer your question, but I think teams are just going to have to kind of see how all this shakes up. I think that guy's talent level is so strong, and he doesn't really have a history of other criminal activity. So I don't know if it'll really what it might impact really is just Anderson going above him. I think is how that will really come to fruition. But I still think he will be a top 5 pick, pending what the legal ramifications are.
So let's say the legal ramifications are somewhat significant. I still think he goes in the first round, and there is an opportunity with the Bears trading to get him at a later pick. In my mind, which
that'd be fantastic.
That's ideal for the Bears, obviously. Yeah. Will that scenario come about? Don't know. Yeah. Obviously, that's speculating. But I would not take him at 4, though. I would trust your gut and then go with a pass rusher because we need them badly. Yeah. Nothing against Dominic Robinson, but he was a 5th. Was he 5th or 6th?
5th round.
5th round pick. Did not get done last year.
Yeah.
You need to fix that spot.
Yeah.
You do. And the D-line as a whole, granted, all got to be fixed.
Yeah.
But last question, because we got to end here in about a minute. your thoughts on the linebacker spot right now?
Linebacker?
Because you're going to need to at least draft or trade for,
Yeah.
or free agency, one linebacker.
Yes.
I think you trust Jack in the middle, but you got to get one more.
Yeah.
You're running a 4-3. What do you think we do here?
I mean, listen, I think you bring Jack Sanborn back as a starter, and then, if you can get like a Morrow for a cheap 1-year deal and then draft someone to bring in.
Morrow did not impress me. I was really hyped up about him. I just didn't buy it.
So I don't disagree with you, but I also think linebacker, bringing someone in fresh as a rookie is very hard because you're going against offensive linemen that have been in the league for 5-6 years that are much stronger and bigger than you. So letting someone learn a little bit to kind of get a little more adapted to the NFL could set that player up for success rather than right off the bat not being.
Well, linebacker's tricky though because the league's become so pass heavy that they have to be able to cover, and you can't just get a bruiser linebacker anymore like Dick Butkus.
Right.
Love that guy. But you need to be able to cover, be fast enough to do whatever you need to do in a zone read. It's got to be what it is. So I think the younger linebacker, especially in the draft, you can get someone like the 3rd round. I'm all for that because they're learning that spot in this era of just, have to be able to cover if you need to, whatever's going to be tight end or slot receiver. I'd rather draft and go into free agency and get some, veteran who's really good, but, I don't know. That's my opinion. I'll leave it at that.
Well, and I think, too, though, like that makes the defensive line that much more important because they make the linebacker's job that much easier.
Especially in a 4-3. Yes, I agree with that.
So Morrow maybe didn't have the strongest year, but what would he look like with some better defensive linemen in front of him? But I guess you could say that for anyone too.
No.
But I think if you can get a linebacker in the 3rd, 4th round and kind of let them get some playing time and
even Sanborn was an undrafted free agent, so I know we didn't re-sign Roquan, but the Ravens are paying him God money, and I'm very happy we didn't do that in hindsight. Like, I love him to death, but smart move, right? Got a 2nd rounder, I don't care.
Yeah.
And that's all the time we have for today, though. Bear down, my friends. Fretzel, give him a dough. Bears.